I'm live, and so you. Let's go, man. It's Friday, the day after Christmas. I hope everybody that celebrates Christmas had a wonderful one. I did. I had a fantastic Christmas. And it did take a lot of driving, but I had a tremendous time that Thursday. I didn't have to go to my garbage job, which makes me ecstatic. But now that it's Friday, we're here. It's freezing out. Apparently, we're going to get some kind of snowstorm or something along those lines, which I am not looking forward to at all. I despise snow. I despise looking at it. I certainly despise having to shovel it off my car. So it's going to be interesting, but you can't get a decent weather report or concept or whatever when it comes to all this extensive, technologically advanced version of radar reading and everything. It's just pathetic, just like everything else here in the United States. Now, since that's out of the way, let's get into what I'm talking about today, which was something I heard from good old Player Essence, Bloober Team. So I didn't know anything about this company called Bloober Team. I had to look them up. They did the Blair Witch game, which I never played, nor would I play, seeing as how I saw both the first Blair Witch and the second Blair Witch in the theaters, and they both sucked dick. So I had no interest in a game based on it, related to it in any way, shape, or form. They also created a bunch of other games, none of which appear on the Switch 1 or have been announced for a Switch 2 release. However, apparently this company, in fact, if you want, just give me 1 minute. I will look it up right now. Let's just take a look. Okay, Bloober Team. Bloober Team. That's what it is. Bloober. Is it Bloober? Or is it Blooper? I heard it was Blooper. Whatever. I don't know. This is Chronos. It's Bloober. Okay, so anyway. Our projects. All right, so this is what they've done. Layers of Fear. Legacy, Solitude, Interface, Layers of Fear 2, Blair Witch. Observer, System Redux, The Medium, and Silent Hill 2's re-release as well as Chronos. Chronos is on the Switch too. That I know. But, well, if it's blue, I'm going to have to fix that then. Let me edit this. It's Bloober. Bloober, not Blooper. Okay, there you go, Bloober. There we go. So we'll just change that. Okay, now that that's all done, we have, let's see, the Medium is only on, well, it's on everything but a Switch console. Anyway, so yeah, they do a lot of horror genre games and everything. And recently, Bloober Team had just announced that they were working on something called Project M, as they're going to codename it, which is an exclusive to the Switch 2. And the reason why that is significant is because, once again, it seems as though a company who has dealt with so-called AAA companies. Now, let's look at the parallels with them and From Software. So Bloober, I don't believe, has ever made anything that Sony has paid for. Bloodborne is not a Sony exclusive. It is a Sony exclusive, but it's not a PlayStation exclusive. It's also on PC. But Bloober has made only games for Xbox, Steam, so on and so forth. However, they do, despite the fact that there's only one, well, in their case, there are only two games that they released that are on the Switch, Chronos and Blair Witch. Blair Witch is on both Switch 1, Switch 2. Chronos is on Switch 2. Whereas From Software just had Dark Souls. They both went from being exclusively so-called AAA or mainstream and decided to make a game that's exclusive to the Switch 2, like the Duskbloods. And they, Bloober, just like From Software, they are very excited about the work they're doing with Nintendo and really looking forward to it, as they've aligned it with Silent Hill. I have no interest in what was that game called? Oh, the Eternal Darkness, which was on the GameCube, I believe. Pretty sure it was on the GameCube, and I never played that. So there are a bunch of titles also that they mentioned that it's like, but they are very excited about working with Nintendo as well, just like From Software. So then the question now becomes, are these companies, especially these smaller companies, not so much, this one is kind of independent, From Software is not. But if you do get, because From Software is more or less financed by Bandai Namco, and as I've mentioned, an expansion or extension of Bandai Namco, which was Bandai Namco Singapore, is now owned by Nintendo specifically. Bandai Namco and Nintendo have been working with each other for years, for decades. So Bandai Namco, when they were first called Bandai, Namco always had Pac-Man. And Bandai was something else. Let me just take a look at Bandai Namco because I know that there were games. Let's do that. Let's go like this. Let's go title game. We'll say games. Okay, so we're talking. I want to go back to their history with the Nintendo Entertainment System because we're talking about they did Code Vein, of course. You know who Bandai Namco is? Tales of Berseria, Little Nightmares. I didn't know they did that. The Tales of series, a Code Vein 2. I didn't even know was out. I didn't know they created that. The Blood of the Dawnwalker. Like they've been doing a lot of work with the so-called exclusive or the mainstreams. But the Pac-Man's on Switch. Everybody Golf, that's on Switch. Shadow of the Labyrinth is on Switch. Like they have a lot of these games and everything like that. But there was a period of time when they were just making sort of games for Nintendo exclusively on Nintendo Entertainment System. And they were not Bandai Namco. I don't think they were originally, but I could be wrong. But whatever the case, From Software is distributed by them. This Bloober, independent means that you distribute yourself, typically. You could be a small company, but you're not independent unless you do it yourself. They are kind of independent. And with that being said, you sort of wonder what this means. Now, I know what my theory is, that Nintendo has taken over and everybody sees it. But you can't really say that for certainty because the future can change at any point. It's not looking good for anything involving PlayStation or especially Microsoft. But for the most part, it appears as though the tide has turned. And now that Nintendo has gotten to be the number one gaming company, small companies like this are going to be working with them directly. Now, Nintendo can just go to companies like this, give them some money and say, hey, we want you to make something for us. However, with Bloober, they made it seem as if they themselves wanted to do this without much motivation from Nintendo. So it's pretty interesting because, as I was mentioning, their games, which I'm kind of interested in taking a look at now. I don't know if whatever this Project M will give me any sustenance. I don't know if I'll have any interest in it when they start showing trailers and everything, but I do know that I like to play the Nintendo exclusives more so than the games that are cross-platformed. When I present my videos, I like to keep it just the Switch exclusives, Switch 2 exclusives and everything like that. There will be titles like Resident Evil Requiem and Pragmatic that are going to be on other consoles, and there have been, like Cyberpunk and Street Fighter 6, that I've done Let's Plays of and reviews just to give people an idea as to what it's like on the Nintendo console. But mostly I like the exclusives because Nintendo makes the best games. So I want to play their games and not so much somebody else's that was ported. Now, From Software is different. I don't know why. Capcom games, I can tell you why, because for 40 years, they've not steered me wrong. But with From Software games, their titles should not work. And for the most part, if you have any semblance of a necessitation towards sanity, they don't work because they make you nuts. The concept of losing progress. It annoys me when a game doesn't save or I forget to save a game from about 20 minutes after a specific point that I did save previously, and I lost things I could just redo, no problem. Like, for instance, when I was live streaming last night, Civilization 7, and for some ungodly reason, I just forgot to save the last time I played that, which was the Sunday previous, leading to me having to do a few turns over again from the transition of exploration to the modern age. It pissed me off. So when you go through so much trouble fighting too many enemies and bosses that have way too much health above your own, and the concept of your death is imminent, inevitable, and then you have to go back to this one little spot that obviously, if you died there, there is a reason for it, and you have to pick up whatever it is that you've progressed through, which typically, unless we're talking about Sekiro, which was the only game that really differed from this formula by From Software at this point, but the Dustbloods has not come out yet, so we don't know. But typically you're in hot water and you have to pick up souls / blood echoes / runes, all of which not only dictate your character's leveling up process, but also your economic structure, because you need to trade those in to upgrade your weapons, to get better weapons, to get better armor, to buy items that you'll need, like homeward bones and stuff like that, specifically so that you don't get stuck in those positions. And if you get killed along the way of trying to pick up that progress, you lose it completely, including a massive amount of souls or runes or whatever from a boss you just defeated. So whether or not the boss comes back, the enemies do. And you have to go through this process over and over and over again. It is not a rogue game. Rogue games are when you die, you go back to the beginning, but typically you'll bring with you something that you did unlock. With this, you can just be stuck in perpetual mediocrity because you keep losing your souls or runes or whatever, blood echoes. And that's how From Software games fuck you over. And that's where their challenge comes from, is that you're not capable of promoting your character because you keep losing your progress. And that's what drives me absolutely out of this planet, batshit insane bonkers, because I can't tolerate losing progress. It's a waste of my time. And I don't like time to be wasted. Every second is precious. I appreciate every moment I'm on this beautiful planet, and I don't want to waste it on having to do the same thing I just did over again, especially if I lost the ability for me to get stronger so that I don't have to do that over again later on in the game. So From Software games should never work. However, when Miyazaki is directing them specifically, because Dark Souls 2 is fucking easy, and if you've never played Dark Souls, you start with 2 because it's way too simple. It's way too simple. But it's annoying, yes. You'll need thousands of arrows because you don't want to get overwhelmed by a bunch of enemies just attacking you from a million different areas. But it's still ridiculously easy compared to the other games. Dark Souls 2 is, especially when you know how to use your bonfire aesthetics. But the Miyazaki games just have this way about them, a flavor that works. It just makes it possible. So with that, with the release of Elden Ring sometime before I die, hopefully, and with the Duskbloods and everything, that company that's in its own sense is independent, but more or less it runs through Bandai Namco. It's distributed by Bandai Namco. This one, Bloober, is completely devoid of that big publisher that it's connected to at this point. So whatever Project M is, we're going to have to wait and see. Now, as I've mentioned, why does it mean anything to me if I have no interest in their games in the first place? I mean, first off, I don't know if I don't have an interest in their games. I haven't really seen any of their games. I'm going to watch some walkthroughs of these that I've just read to take a gander at what they're capable of. But there's a possibility that even when Nintendo apparently was struggling, they still had the capacity to buy Monolith Soft. they still had the capacity to buy Bayonetta. They still did things that sort of shook up the gaming industry a bit for the better. Bayonetta 2, one of the greatest games you'll ever play. I absolutely adore that game. And I still have it on my hard drive. I just got to download it again. It was better than Bayonetta 1 by a lot. It's not even worth talking about. All the Xenoblade Chronicles games, so much better than Gears and Saga, not just because Gears was unfinished and rushed, or Saga was kind of unfinished or rushed. Just the stories are better. If you're into that sort of thing, the gameplay is better. It's more unique. It has its own sort of format, its own personality. And 3 was really that was just the absolute top of the mountain. That was incredible, was 3. So you wonder if maybe that's something with this. I doubt it, but you're just trying to take a look at the landscape. Now, we're talking about 2026, right? So when you look at it already, you've got the Capcom games that are coming out, including, Mega Man, including Pragmatic, Resident Evil Requiem. Pretty much anything that Capcom is releasing is coming out on the Switch too. Okay? So if they announce, for instance, down the road, which they probably will, a Street Fighter 7, it's going to come out on the Switch too. Whatever Capcom is doing will be on the Switch too. It's just that simple. But you look at their titles. You look at Fire Emblem, Weaves of Fate. That one was announced. That I'm friggin' fiending for. That, you look at the Duskbloods, you look at Elden Ring, you look at possibly this. There are so many games in 2026 that we've seen been announced that are going to be really interesting, to say the very least. On top of that, this, as I was mentioning last week, is that point again where all you're doing, if you are subscribed to Nintendo of America or UK or whatever, is you're just going to the channel any chance you see an update, waiting with bated breath as to what it's going to be. With the next year coming, you're going to see a lot of conversion from titles that were popularized on other AAA games and whatever, and PC and everything. You're going to see them start to come over to the Switch 2 now more often. There'll be announcements of future projects and everything like that that will be coming over. So 2026, which will be really officially the first year when we get to June of the Switch 2, is going to start turning some heads and really shooting those numbers up with console sales and gaming sales and everything like that. And it just makes it all the more exciting to have a Switch 2 if you're really into video games. Now, I do look forward to certain projects because I want to create content for everybody. But I could just every day, if I wanted, bullshit with you guys for half an hour. I'd wait once a week to have more to go into with everybody. But for the most part, when it comes to doing things, I don't mind playing games. I mean, it's not my big thing. When I was a kid, I enjoyed it more, but I was a kid. I enjoyed a lot of things I don't enjoy anymore. It's just what happens. You grow up. Unless you are an influencer on the internet, then you never grow up, or at least you don't want to. You want to be Peter Pan. Which now will lead me to this particular conversation. So, according to the internet, or YouTube anyway, this Treasure, which is the best game I played last year, or this past year, by far, it's the best game I played. That incredible title somehow is a failure, according to YouTube, because a few numbnuts that most of whom didn't even play the game, but were reacting to a 7.5-minute video that Nintendo released that had the audacity to show footage of people talking. That they dumped all over and just made it like this was the worst thing that ever happened. And now it's almost as if they're trying to explain why it was as bad. Listen, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which I have not finished yet, still milking it. The game is the best gaming experience I've had all year. Whatever it is about it you don't like is your personal opinion. The concept that this polished, beautiful game that's It's a first person shooter that gives you abilities and everything that most first person shooters don't have. And the fact that it's better in every way in terms of the finished product, the production, the look, the feel, everything, that it's so much better than the previous Metroid Prime games. The idea that games which were rated 97, 91, and 90 somehow are immensely better, superior to a game that's just better than it in every way, it makes no sense. The concept makes no sense. But once more, and this is another reason why I am really looking forward to Nintendo just totally knocking this out of the water in the next year or two. One of the reasons is because I want these people to eat crow. They are so arrogant. They are so pathetic. And they are trying so hard to make it appear as though Nintendo somehow is inferior still, despite the fact that it's obviously superior. So now we have that Metroid Prime 4 is the Metascore is 79. It was 80 for a while. So we have, here's Edge Magazine. But I mean, I don't even know what you're talking about. I played this game. Edge Magazine is saying that it's embarrassing. What are you talking about? What about this idiot? Amounts of forced backtrack. Welcome to Metroid Prime, dipshit. More like a greatest hits title. Yep. Here we go again. A large desert with not. There's so much in this desert. Like incredible how. And there are a lot of people that are giving it huge remarks and everything. Even my Nintendo News gave it an 80, but like, okay, so I haven't beat it yet, so I don't know for sure what the ending is, but somebody mentioned something about babysitting. You do have to keep Federation troops healthy while you're fighting in certain areas, but at the same time, it doesn't deviate, it doesn't destroy the game. These people making it seem like all you're doing is just shooting air and then, picking up. Like, the whole concept is so fucking stupid because these people don't have the balls to step up and say something that the so-called influencers have already claimed before the game came out. And if you're going to keep saying, well, we waited since 2017, you didn't wait since 2017. You waited since 2020 when they announced that they were going to redo the whole thing. And even then, you weren't waiting since then. You were waiting since Metroid Dread. So to make it seem as if the game's a failure because it's not what you were waiting for 18 years or 8 years. No, it wasn't that you were waiting that long. You weren't waiting that long at all. There was a re-release of the first Metroid Prime. There was a Metroid Dread game. Like, there were other Metroid games to sate your desires between that. So that's a lame ass excuse for why you're dumping on a game that they keep saying is visually stunning. Well, if it's visually stunning and it's the same gameplay format, you have a problem with Soul Valley, which is covered in things to do. Forced backtracking, that is every Metroid Prime series, every Metroid game is forced backtracking. So obviously you don't know what you're talking about. But you see what I'm saying? Like, this is the kind of stupidity that people will harp on to make it seem as if the best game of this past year is somehow not that good, or even one of the worst games, or an embarrassment, or whatever. And I just want these people, it was the same thing that happened with the release of the Switch 2 itself. I want them to realize the error of their concepts because it all comes down to the analytics. Now, Metroid Prime 4 is not going to sell. It's going to maybe sell about 1 million to 1.5 million copies. It'll most likely make its number back, but it's not going to sell as much as, like, say anything else. This one right here, 94% like this game, IGN 8 out of 10. Like, obviously you're stupid. Okay, like obviously you're stupid. So you're making things up. Now there's nothing here about anything related to the sales numbers. It's about why they didn't make it open world, which whatever, they didn't make it open. What I don't care about open world. But there's nothing here about the sales. It's been number one on digital sales. That's about it. That's about all I know. But whatever the case, when it comes to the cold hard analytics, Nintendo is still. It was like the same thing with Mario Kart World. Well, Mario Kart World it's terrible. It's got nothing. What do you mean it's got nothing? It's Mario Kart with more mechanics. What are you talking about? It's got bigger maps. Like, what are we talking about? So obviously, it's the same bullshit lame ass excuse, and it's just people being pissed for the sake of being pissed. But it still appears as though Nintendo is winning, despite the article that in November in the United States there were more PlayStations sold than Nintendo. It could be a lot of reasons why. It could be because Switch 2 didn't have enough stock in the United States. Like there could be tons of reasons why. That doesn't mean anything. But it's this attempt to make it seem as if Nintendo is failing in some way that is a very pathetic attempt. It's not working, and above all, doesn't really speak for the rest of the world. That right there, that marking of 94% enjoyed the game, and it's an 8 out of 10 out of IGN, just shows you about how ridiculous YouTube is. But I'm not going to get into that, like I said, until I finish the game. I'm not done with the game yet. I just have to get to the Chrono Tower. But I can say, and I was saying this during my Let's Play, if you do want to nitpick, you can talk about how even though the game itself shows you that you need to get all the keys, and oh, by the way, there's this thing with a mech and there's this thing with the crystals. Even though that's the case, you can feel as though it's kind of padding it out because it's making you get all the. Now, you don't have to backtrack, for the crystals are everywhere in Soul Valley, and you go through Soul Valley to make the backtracking not so harsh or horribly repetitive as it would be in previous games. But in Soul Valley, there are all these crystals and rocks and everything lying around that you can get a lot of crystals from. There are also crystals in certain areas that you go to find the keys. And there are shrines that give you a lot of crystal caches. So it's not as if you have to go back. You can do that on your way through the game. It's really not a big deal. And when it comes to backtracking, in the sense that you found this upgrade and you have to go here to get this item, it's the same thing as what Metroid Prime has been about. Having a hard time with the concept that she finds a chip that has to be integrated to her arm cannon, which takes you back to a certain area. Yeah, is it going to a Chozo planet? This isn't a Chozo planet. Right, so you want something new, but then you want the same thing. You just want Chozo statues holding, certain items, and they just give her upgrades. Instead, you have Federation upgrades that require a Federation troop. Now, could they have gone back to another Chozo-based area, or could they have done what they did in Corruption, what they did in some of these other games where there was an item sitting there and you just picked it up instead of like having to integrate it into your arm cannon? Yeah, they could have done that. Does it affect the game negatively? No. What's the problem? You still get an arm cannon. And then on top of that, you get upgrades that are waiting for you out and so just, like I said, I want to finish the game. I want to see. I've gotten frustrated during it, but I get frustrated with everything. So that doesn't really matter. I mean, there are so many times I'm playing Civilization 7, which is one of my favorite games I've played this year as well, where I'll just scream and yell and say, this explorative game and yada, yada, that's why this game sucks. Like, I'll say things like that. I play Overwatch 2 most of the time for my competitive hitch, and all I talk about is how I despise the game so much. So I'll say that a lot because I get angry. But even with how challenging the game is, what they're saying I can grasp, at least I can grasp The embarrassment thing, I don't know where you're coming with that. How can you say the game is an embarrassment? You can see the amount of effort that was put into it, at least, and what its results are, how polished it is. To say it's an embarrassment because what? Flat land? What are you talking about? Fury Green is stunning and has so much lore and everything, and its design and whatever. The ice area has the ice wolves and all that shit. It's just all these different areas are they're so distinct from one another, and it's really not that big a deal to get to them. And as I said, it helps with the backtracking. The forced backtracking, that's ridiculous. That's just what Metroid is. Oh, you can't use this for this door yet. We have to go back. Stuff like that happens all the time. That's part of the discovery of Metroid Prime, Metroid series in general. But I'm not going to get into that until I finish the game, which may not be for a few more days, but could be before next week. I'm going to do my review on that one. But when it came to today's base topic, Bloober Games, it's nice to see that another company has returned to the light side of the force, because if you sit with Sony or Xbox, not only are you on a sinking ship, but you're on a sinking ship of scumbags and piles of dog shit. The worst people in the business. Sony was not one of the originals. Neither was Microsoft. Microsoft is you want to talk about embarrassment. Windows 11 is an embarrassment. It's broken. It has to scan constantly, which eats up all of your physical memory on your computer. It completely corrupts everything that your CPU is running. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. And they did it specifically so that you'd be forced to buy a new computer. Or you got Sony, who just keeps trying to make movies over and over again, and they're bad movies with terrible messages and horrible characters. That's all the United States bases everything off of, is the characters. Well, your characters are shit. Let's talk about Kratos again. Here's an asshole who did nothing but scream and yell and talk about vengeance because Ares fooled him into killing his. They took Heracles' story, which was a tragic story, and they made it into some asshole who just wants to kill lots of people, gets the ability to kill lots of people, and shows his loyalty by murdering his own family. And he's so mournful that he's fucking hot women all over the place in response. And he spends the next few games dying, going to Hades, coming back from the dead, like it's just a Sunday walk, and screaming and yelling some more, to the point where when he is the god of war, he makes a fool of himself because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and he's just starting wars left and right. And when he is taken out of the equation, he's pissed some more and works with the Titans, and none of whom looked like Titans you would expect them to look like, only to be angrier and angrier and angrier for no reason whatsoever, and still fucking women, still fucking a married woman or a married goddess, an Aphrodite, which I can't blame you, but at the same time, that's what he was doing, all so that he can get not his comeuppance, because he kills himself with the sword of Olympus, only to walk away from it yet again, but so that he can settle down and marry a giantess in the Northlands and raise an obnoxious little cocksucker of a son. So, like, that game is, extraordinary. But Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is an embarrassment. Okay, whatever you said, man. Because it's the internet, and influencers never lie, and they're never wrong. They have money. People in the United States with money can't lie or be wrong, right? So, this is one of the reasons why, again, I keep trying to become popular. I just keep, like a good Roman legionnaire, just bash my head against the wall until I break through. And I don't take no for an answer, because I just want to have a voice of reason that's not crying out in the wilderness, but finally being heard. Because stuff like this, look, the world has spoken. Nintendo's taken over. It's not because Bloober's making an exclusive with Nintendo, because nobody really cares about Bloober. But I'm just saying the smaller companies are starting to move over. Capcom is always there with Nintendo. That's never been any different. That's the way it's been since the dawn. of video gaming since the Nintendo Entertainment System. Capcom's always been there. Other companies like Namco or whatever, they've always been there. But certain other companies that seem to think that lying in bed with the biggest, most disgusting excuses of companies like Sony and Microsoft, the newbies, right? All these so-called gatekeepers of video gaming, they will tell you who the newbies are, the normies are. You didn't show up until long after the video game industry, especially the home console industry, had already been well established. So you are in no place to judge anybody, especially when it comes to playing fucking video games. All right? This is what the video game industry is. This is what the video game genre is. You buy a game, you give another company a whole bunch of money, 60, 70, 30, whatever amount of dollars it is. You play the thing, and either you go, that was fun, I'll do it again. Or you go, that was all right, don't know if I'll do it again. Or you go, that sucked, and you throw it away. That's all it is. If you're playing games to be inspired because of the art, well, that's your problem. The rest of the world wants to just have a good fucking time. Now, I get it. If you live in the United States, there are no movies. Well, sports is not art, but there's nothing really artistic here other than stealing ideas from other people and acting like they're your own. That's what the United States does all the time. They call them patents. But I get that you need something inspirational. That's why I write novels for you kids. But when it comes down to video games are not meant to be inspirational. Companies that do that are wasting their time and your money. You're not going to pay $60 or $40 or $20 or whatever to be inspired once and then move on. That makes no sense. If you're going to do that, or you're going to play a game over and over again with the most dumbed down, mundane, repetitive gameplay, just so you can get to certain cutscenes, maybe you need to get laid or something. I don't know, because that's just sad. And I feel for you. I don't say it to be insulting. I say it because I feel for you. But you play a game, you have a good time. If you don't, then the game sucks. Doesn't have to be subjective. That could be a fact. There are a lot of broken-ass games out there. There are a lot of games that are just boring. I don't need to play a game to see somebody's personal story about their abusive father or dealing with their child's debilitating illnesses or whatever. I don't need to play a game. You could do that if it's a fun game and it's not explicit. But to make a game that has no real elements of enjoyment or challenge people with puzzle solving, problem solving, or mechanics that sort of challenge your Twitch responses and everything like that, to make a game that's just, let's get to the next cutscene, that's not the point of making video games. So you kids need to get over yourselves and stop acting like video games need to be inspired, because there was never any inspiration in the video game industry outside making money. That's all it's been. That's all it ever has been. That's all it ever will be. So the lame-ass crying and whimpering of how the video game industry is collapsing on itself now because there's no heart or soul. Guys, what were you doing your whole life when you were playing video games? When you were putting a disc or whatever in a drive or whatever it is that you preferred, what do you think you were doing? You were giving a company money, and if it was fun, you were going to give them more money. That's all it was. Not art, not meant to be art. You made it that way. That's you. Okay? And with the internet still harping on this concept and then wondering why the Sonys and the Microsofts are going to obscurity while Nintendo's taking over again, well, because people want to have a good time. Family fun or like universal fun or wholesome enjoyment is not a terrible thing. It might be here in the United States where everybody wants to be all dark and miserable, but around the world, it's not a terrible thing to appeal to a family orientation. That's not a terrible thing. It saved Nintendo. It didn't save Nintendo, but it helped Nintendo save the home gaming console genre and business. Nothing wrong with wholesomeness, guys. Sorry to tell you this. You don't need screaming, brooding, ugly, half-naked jackasses with goatees slicing monstrosities of Greek mythology in half. You don't need to have that to be taken seriously. So that's what video games are. So like I said, you put the thing on, you enjoy yourself, it's good. You don't tell it to fucking take a walk, trade it back into GameStop, whatever, throw it in the trash, whatever. That's what gaming is. So, we'll see what happens from this point on with all of this. But yeah, Bloober, congratulations. You figured it out. You want to make a real game. You want something that's going to resonate. You don't cross-platform it. You just put it on the Switch too. You work with Nintendo directly, you're going to make the best game you ever had. So who's next? Who's going to be the next independent or smaller company that makes an exclusive for the Switch 2? We're going to find out in the future. As of now, I am going to try to see what the weather's doing and whether or not it's going to be traumatic or if I'm going to be able to get through this. They also said that the temperatures are going to drop or plummet in a few days, and I'm going, it's 25 degrees outside. Okay. Anyway, so I'll be back on next week talking about what we'll find out. Till then,